Oh my goodness. We are live. Welcome everyone to 2022, our first book study session of the year. I'm glad to be here with you live from Tampa Bay, Florida. Woo! Here I am. Of course, this week, well, I want to welcome all of our members and our guests. I do see Scott's here with us. Good to see you, Scott. Catherine, who is a new official member of the John Lavenia Success Mastermind. Welcome, Catherine. Glad you're here as well. And of course, we have some of our usual suspects. Linda's here, Stuart, Bob, and Missy. And of course, this week we are reviewing our first Neville Goddard book, right? So we've been all around, with all these different authors, and Neville's name keeps coming up because of Missy. And so now we're gonna take up some Neville. The book that we're getting into is The Law and the Promise. Hopefully everyone got to read the first 3 chapters. Hey, Lindsay, glad you're here. First 3 chapters of this book. And I've read Seed Time and Harvest from Neville. I've also read Awakened Imagination, which this book kind of smacked of both of them. So I guess repetition's good, right? For those of you who've read other Neville stuff before, like myself, it's not like he came up with a new truth or something, and so he had to write another book, but just more angles on the same theme, which he tends to circle around again and again. And it's the idea of, well, as the title of this book suggests, right, that there's laws of creation, and there's a promise that comes with that. Like, you actually can create stuff imaginatively. You can actually use this faculty, which he's right out of the gate in this book. For those of you who read the first 3 chapters, he's talking about it as it is not something separate from like your imaginative faculty and that of spirit, God, supreme omniscience, right? It's not a separate thing. So that is where I think Neville takes us to a new place in terms of really breaking down any barriers between, hopefully between what you think your abilities are and what you actually can accomplish. There was a pretty amazing guy who said, you can do all this and even greater things. I don't think too many people believed him, right? I'm still working on it myself, but you can do this and even greater things. Wow, right? So this is pretty heavy. I'm excited to go on this journey with you guys over the next 5 weeks. This is week number 1. We're going to do 3 chapters a week for a total of 15 chapters. So who's got some thoughts on this? This is my first exposure to this particular book, but not to Neville. Who's got some thoughts on this? And of course, I'm going to have to call out Missy, because if it wasn't for Missy, we probably wouldn't be reading Neville
and
in this group right now. Hey, Missy.
Yeah. This man, I highly recommend that you listen to his voice, listen to him tell it on YouTube, because his voice, he's a very elegant man, and he's a very elevated speech pattern and wonderful vocabulary. But if you just, and I'm having a lot of trouble right now, even though I know all this, even though I know the imagination is not something tied to the senses, I'm too close to the senses of my physiology, and it's probably how Stuart feels right now. I'm having a problem getting away from it. You have to live, like he says, from the end, in the end, not now. And that's why in some earlier meeting today, I told about this lady. She just the other day wrote a letter to herself from a year from now, which is what I'm going to do, because I am so close to it. And I am actually imagining at night that Bob and I, if any of you know the biblical story of the Christ in Capharnaum, the lady who had an issue of blood for 12 years, and legally she couldn't even leave her home, but she heard that Jesus was coming, and she left her home, and there were hordes of people around him, and she kept saying to herself, if only I can touch the hem of his garment. So she went on the floor, And he at first didn't know who touched him. He said, "Who has touched me?" And she was healed completely, went away. So for a while, I've been doing that. And I am now able to, I mean, it's so real to me. I can see his feet because I make Bob come with me in the thing too. We're crawling between the people because even when Christ said, "Who touched me?" the pastor said, "How do we know? There's too many people around." So we're crawling. I am clutching his robe. It is a silk that I have never felt before. It's so light. It has no dirt on it whatsoever. I can feel the dirt. I can smell the dirt. I can taste the dirt. The back of his foot has some dirt on it. And his robe has a fragrance, which I can't describe. It's between botanical and like a cologne, but it's not that. And it's very light. And I keep saying, if I just touch the hem of his garment, we will be completely healed, whatever's wrong. So I'm like this, and Bob is just touching his robe. And I said, "Bob, squeeze the robe." And Bob said, "Today, do you see what the difference is? I already have I'm just touching the robe, and I'm practically, pulling it off, God Almighty." And in one of the imaginings, he turned around and he helped me stand up. And he said, like he said to many other people, the lepers, "Your faith has made thee whole." But I'm not yet whole. So I keep saying, "I believe, Lord, help thou my unbelief." And I'm stuck. So that's why I'm going to go to the end. I'm going to go to a year from now and write myself back. And Stuart, if you have any comments on this, I need some help on this.
Well, we'll get some Stuart action going here. We'll get some Stuart. But, the idea of projecting into the future, what did he talk about here in these first three chapters? That's one radical or, causative use of imagination. But the other one is where we maintain and we cause things to persist because we keep imaging them. There's a lot of agreement on that, right? So like this is a box, right? And this is stuff. And why does it persist? Because we keep imaging it and it keeps persisting. So the other side of that is revision. You see where he talked about, all right, so here are, the roots of the evils, the transgressions, the what have you, right? Can we go back now and using that same faculty, can we image a reinterpretation, a recapitulation, what did he call it? A revision of that and sin no more, so to speak. What was the quote, Bob? Though your sins are scarlet, they will be white as snow, something like this.
White as snow.
Right.
Isaiah, chapter 1.
There you go. So, let's go to Linda, and then we're going to get some more commentary out here. Linda, is this your first exposure to Neville? Linda Landry.
Microphone.
Linda Landry.
Microphone, Linda.
Yeah, the microphone helps.
There
Yes.
she is. All right.
Yeah, no, I've read Power of Awareness and The Awakened Imagination.
Awakened Imagination. All right.
Yeah.
Famous one.
Yeah. So, but no, what you were just saying, John, I found it very interesting. I've never thought that we could, well, like it says, turn the wheel backwards. Imagine something that happened in the past in a different scenario.
Right.
So that you can do better or feel better even.
Be better.
Change history.
Yes, change it. Yeah. Yeah, I just think about that time I injured myself on vacation. I'd like to turn back the wheel on that one. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he gave a story of the woman who had 39 years of suffering with the back or the hip or the whatever, right? And then she went back and revised, and like within 2 days, she wasn't feeling any discomfort after 39 years of it. So how much of this stuff is psychosomatic? Who's doing this to ourselves? Who's causing these things to persist? And on that note, Linda, right, going back and revising an event which wasn't optimal, right? I think about this as it relates to. I'm sorry, I'm hijacking your talk here.
That's
but
fine.
As it relates to how I occur in society. So in school, grade school, high school, what have you, right? I was not like one of these popular jock kids or anything. I was one of the heavy metal kids, right? Doing things I shouldn't have been doing behind the school and all that. And so, you know, that led to me being rather, I guess stoic would be, you know, a nice way to put it, but kind of, you know, reserved or introverted as a young adult, right? Well, what if I go back and I just revise all that stuff? And in fact, I've done that to a degree, right? So now I could show up in a crowd and not be, you know, just a wallflower or introverted or something, because I'm no longer that guy. If I keep dragging that guy with me who was unpopular in school or something to my present, well, you get more of that, right? But it's all right here. I'm imagining it. I've seen people make tremendous transformations, right? And sometimes, and I'm sure you guys have seen this, right? A life-threatening, near-death experience or whatever. So they've been running bullshit on themselves for decades. And suddenly they realize, I don't have the luxury of this anymore. I start fresh. Here's who I am now. And so, you know, that's an impactful, you know, an event or something that can cause that. But do we have to have our back right against the wall to start getting creative? Do we have to? No, you don't have to. So maybe go look at that injury and you know, revise it. Back to you, Linda. I'm sorry. Linda's already muted. She's already done. Linda,
it's all good, John.
Did you get new bookshelves?
No,
No.
this is my office. Yeah.
Okay. I don't think I've ever seen you in your office.
Probably. I don't like to be in here, but.
And is that a dead cat behind you? What is that? What?
No, it's a squirrel.
A squirrel. Okay, well that's better.
Yeah. We have some taxidermy in here. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a goose and a deer on the left.
Oh, okay. Very good. Well, hooray for taxidermy.
We won't show you that. No.
All right, maybe next time. Who else has some thoughts on this whole Neville thing? Scott, come on out, brother.
Okay. I'm just at the last chapter on the last book, but I got on this one rather quick. I'm saying I'm cheating. I'm listening to an audible, but I'm just trying to keep up with the group a little bit right now. I think it's what I'm trying to do, but you know, I listened very, very carefully. I mean, to what was being said on this imprint. And what I know to be true and everything I heard today and what I read, listened to, however I brought it in, I know it's true, everything that was being told to me. And how I can relate to this is through something I started when I was 13 years old, which was golf. And golf took me to a place of discipline, honor, telling on myself, being honest. You know, there's no integrity in being dishonest, none at all.
Are there ways to cheat?
Matter of fact, there's more integrity in calling your fault out than there is anything. But just that alone is some of the things that golf taught me. But what I have to share here is like this imprint. So in golf, you get fairly good. Practice. You get good after some time. And then you go to like what Jack Nicklaus would say. He goes, you got to vision it. You vision your shot. You're in the moment of this time. You're in it. To, you know, and this is a win at time moment too, by the way. Very high pressured, and you bring this skill of vision into your sight. And so you're challenged with this difficult shot, of course. And so what you do is you imprint what you've done in the past into your head, into like, you go to this hole that's the same yardage, same shot basically, but it's the view of how you've done it before with success. And so you're challenged with this difficulty. So you bring this past impression of success into this, and you replace the whole hole in front of you in the reality of where you're at, and you bring this back past into it. And before you know it, you're executing this shot, and you did it just like you would do it in the past with success. And it's like, and then the rave comes out and the claps and the hurrahs and all that, but you know, which is an also big builder too. But I'm just saying that I really related these first 3 chapters to this imprint and how this imagination of ours, and when we take this to our bed, when we're going to sleep in our subconscious, this power of this impression is huge. And I just feel as though that everything we're doing is so on track. Every time I read something that you've given to us to read, the absorption of what I'm reading is like, oh my gosh, I've felt some of these things before, and I'm understanding them more now of what I've had this capability of doing. And I'm like, wow, I got to start practicing more of this, of my ability with my subconscious on this impregnation of my imagination and what. So I do have visions and stuff of the future, and things have come to me, and I'm like, okay, well, you know, as much as sometimes some of this stuff is unreal, well, maybe it's as real as I want to make it be too, you know? So this is like this whole new concept of the future and where we're going and all this stuff. So I'm really having these not anxieties, but these moments of wow moments. And so I have to express this to everybody. These wow moments I'm having are like unreal. And I have to really calm them down quite a bit and really pay attention to them. And these books are helping me, and these readings are really helping me. And I've always had a very strong belief in Jesus Christ. I took him into my heart when I was 13, as he's been my personal savior forever, guys. And some of the things I'm reading right now are like, you know, I've known the good word and the good book has done all these things for me. And Jesus has taken care of me all my life. You know, every time I've needed his help, he's been there for me. So that's my testimony on Jesus. But, you know, the good Lord and the universe and the creator that has created us is something else. And some of these things that we're getting are just like that powerful. And I just don't know how to express it other than the power that we're being shown is like, wow, just wow. I'm done talking. That's it.
Thank you, Scott. You know, the word surreal is coming up for me as I'm hearing you talk. So having sort of a surreal experience, that word came up earlier today and for our mastermind group on general session, where one of our members opened a brick and mortar building factory, bought a forklift, and he was like, this is kind of surreal because that wasn't his life up until recently. And but that's the path that he's going down now. I feel the same way, like with my goodness, I live in Florida as of like 4 days ago. That is so friggin' surreal to me. And so far it's pretty great, you know. But the idea that we have that all this objective reality stuff is effect, and that cause, thought is cause. We've heard this in other books, but the way Neville's presenting it here, it almost, I get a feeling almost like The Matrix. I'm sure you've all seen the movie The Matrix, right? Where it's all data, but it's data for the mind to give you the experience of stuff and things and breathing air and having a body and all this, but it's all nonsense, right? It's all computer program. Now, that's a movie, okay? Although, you know, I'll tell you what, I can relate. Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome. But I'll say that much to the relatedness of what you were just saying is that you even look back to some of the comic books that we read when we were younger, and some of the things and how they are real today. I mean, I remember the Tracy watch, and you know, and he'd wear it and it was hooked up to it, and it would tell him everything he needed to know. Well, what are we wearing today?
Hmm.
You know, so the next thing is, well, where's that flying machine that we get into that takes us wherever we want? That's what's next.
Oh
Okay?
no, I'm waiting for the Star Trek transporter.
That one too.
That
I have to
one.
agree. I think it's really close.
Sign me
I
up for
really
that.
do.
Sign me
You
up
know,
for that, baby. Hey, you
tell
guys
me,
want
I'm
sushi?
about it.
You guys want sushi tonight? I'll meet you in Tokyo. All right, I'll see you there in 3 seconds. Bam, beam me up. Next thing you know, we're eating sushi in Tokyo. That would kind of eliminate the automotive industry. But anyway, long live the internal combustion engine. Back to Bob and Missy.
Well, that's specifically my hand that went up.
Hi,
And
Bob.
I want to give our good friend Stuart a helping hand here, because previous sessions when we were working, Stuart would pretty much parse the reading for us. And I know he's under the weather. So if you don't mind, Stuart, I'll start with chapter 1, because this is a very deep book. I mean, every word is almost pure unrefined gold here. An awakened imagination works with a purpose. That's in chapter 1. That's really powerful. And Scott was doing a little bridge building to the previous book with Joseph Murphy's Power of the Subconscious Mind, because I myself am a golfer and I know the power of visualization. But your subconscious mind is essentially a projection screen onto which things have been projected. And what do we know of what is reality? Well, what happened to us? Okay, the active imagination, and we're jumping forward quite a bit here, revises, and revise comes from revidere, to see again. A revision is to see something again. It's more than just seeing it again, it is rewriting it. It is to change everything. And so if you're faced with, continuing the golf analogy, if you're faced with a 175-yard carry over a lake and a sand trap, and you have you have a club in your hand that you're not really that comfortable with hitting. Okay, you have to put in the past all the failures with that club. And you have to say, this time I see the ball taking off at a great trajectory, honing onto the flagstick, going onto the green, setting me up with a very short putt for a birdie. And that happens and has happened to me. But an active imagination works with a purpose. You have to be active, that is not passive and regurgitating what happened before, but remaking it in the way that you want it to be made. So nothing appears or continues in being by a power of its own. Many years ago, when I went back to school for my MBA, taking a marketing course, the question of ideation came up. Okay, and you cannot look at anything in this world that has been made by human hands that was not originally an idea. Everything that was made was either a divine idea and created by nothing, by the creator of all things, or it is a creation of the human imagination. So we do have a very powerful faculty, which, if it is awakened, if it's not passive, and if it is active, can transform. All right, everything in the world owes its character to imagination on one of its various levels. Again, that just reinforces everything. All men possess the power to create reality, but this power sleeps as though dead when not consciously exercised. So everything that follows upon this, again, is, as John said at the outset, it's reiteration or reinforcement of all these things. And he gives, of course, the various examples throughout the 3 chapters that we've read, and the chapters that will follow will have more examples of how people were able to use their imaginal power to make things happen for them that otherwise would not have happened. And they were able, by the power of their imagination, to move others to do things. For example, the couple that wanted to build the building next to their dwelling / office. Okay, and they didn't want to touch their savings. Well, the contractor whose name they had seen often enough shows up unbidden. He says, I don't call on people, people call me, but I'm wondering why you're leaving that lot vacant. I'll build a building for you. And they did nothing. And then the contractor drew up the plans and they still did nothing. And then he went to the finance company and got all but a few $1,000s and they still did nothing. Finally, the contractor said, look, I will finance the rest of it for you and you can pay me back out of the rent that you collect. Before you knew it, they had their building. They had everything that they had imagined would happen, down to the woman who had shunned them socially showing up and saying, doctor, this is a beautiful building.
But if I could just say one thing, that is in one of his lectures. It's not, I don't think it's in this book. Neville Goddard says there are too many facts in this world. If we can just get to those people had stable imaginative powers. They were stable in it. They were committed to it. Mine's going like a sine wave because I'm afraid of the facts. And that is the key to doing it all. It's a stable and more, I can only do about 1 second of seeing myself physically well. These people had this vision, the two of them together. It's amazing. It's wonderful. And they kept it going. And that is our aim in life. That's what this group is all about. By keeping this going, this group can change the world, and it's our duty to do it.
Can I park on that for a second?
Please.
Chrissy and Bob, because one of the things in that story that Bob just cited was where they were imagining or imaging the building, and we're going to have all this money and the facts, right? And then they cognited, well, why don't we just image this without the money? And that was when it took off. As soon as they got that item out of their path. So that's what came up for me as you were saying that. But also, Bob, it was in a later example where he talked about if all you got out of this was the accomplishment of the goal of whatever the objective was, how mundane or how tragic, right? The real bigger thing is the recognition of, oh my goodness, I used law. Law works, right? Yeah, I got the stuff that I wanted. That's cool. Okay, but holy crap, that worked. Right? There's the big win. And I've seen this a few times in my life. My goodness, here I am in my friggin' disaster of a new office. But here I am. We decided, you know what, we're gonna go do Tampa Bay. And within 6 months, we're here. And like Missy said, it wasn't just, the one person in the couple, right? That's the other thing. Oh, and Bob and Missy, I think you're a perfect example of this because you're in harmonious, vibration and purposes, right? Where you've got antagonistic people, like the woman who wrote them off socially, right? In the story, oh, I don't deal with those people anymore. They're too wacky with their mental, things or whatever. And so where people are antagonistic, then I think that also is a hindrance, just like, oh, we need the money before we can do the building. Right? There's always going to be a naysayer. Actually, I shouldn't affirm that. It just seems that there is, but back to revision, right? What were those, in my own life, right? What were those people who said, I couldn't, I won't, I can't, those people, right? Where are they now? So obviously they're not renting space in my head. I've progressed. I wrote about this in Integrity is Everything. I remember when I decided I'm going to do this band and we're going to do the music and it's going to be great. And people are like, no, you'll never do that. Yeah, we did it. Right. We sold a bunch of CDs, T-shirts, ran around the East Coast and had a lot of fun. Right. We did it. Oh, you'll never start a business. Did it. I left New Jersey, just my own personal preference. I left New Jersey 20 something years ago now. You'll be back. I haven't been back. People got a lot to say. What do you think, Stuart? Let's get Stuart out here.
Well, thanks, Bob, for starting to go through the chapters like that. I appreciated all of your comments. John, you were talking about revision from a personal level. And, you've heard me talk about the teachings of Don Juan and Castaneda and erasing personal history, and what a strange concept that seems like at first. And yet, I, like you, have a bit of a troubled, debaucherous past, and somehow not only coming to terms with that, revising that in such a way that it becomes a beloved part of you, as opposed to something to be ashamed of or ignored, right? And I think there's different ways to revise. In my own situation, I've managed to incorporate those maybe formerly unsavory parts of myself into, a more holistic version of myself, right? I used to say the older you become, the older you get, the more you become who you were, right? And all the bullshit that you pile on yourself kind of falls away, and all those core kind of parts of yourself shine out again. Missy, your story about the robe and the healing, couple things. One, when I hear you say, I can only be in that state for a second, I don't believe you for a second. So I want to encourage you to hold on to that state, whatever it is, right? Because that's the secret. That's the actual secret, right? And John mentioned earlier that it's about how we sustain these thoughts and these feelings, and how we nurture them and nourish them, right? Because the things that are fleeting, we know don't hold power. It's the things that we dwell on and that we entertain and that we nourish and nurture that become these imaginative acts that become reality. Scott, your golf analogy reminded me of my archery analogies. And John, I think one of the first things I did when we met was send you a copy of Zen and the Art of Archery. And really the crux of that whole book to me was about seeing the Zen archer sees the arrow hit the target before it's even released, right? And that the true goal of archery is not to even hit the target, but to become the arrow. And then the ultimate goal is to actually become the target, right? So all this cool stuff that now has kind of come full circle for me, but I appreciate that concept of visualizing the thing happening before you even do it. And John, when I walked on fire years ago, that was one of the exercises that they did with us, was that they had us visualize ourselves walking over the coals over and over and over again, so that by the time we went out and actually did the fire walk, that we had already done it a dozen times in our head, so that there was no fear and that we wouldn't get burned or any of that kind of stuff. As you might imagine, I did take some notes, and I sure would love to drop a couple of these little gems. And oh my God, Bob, you're so right that every page of this book just has gold, and I'll try not to repeat some of the things that you guys said. The world originates in divine activity, identical to what we know as imagination. So he kind of goes in and out of this concept of divine creation, divine imagination, and human imagination. And it was, I want to say it was either in Wake Up and Live, or one of the earlier books that we were reading that talked about that. And I referred to this book where Neville talks about this split between divine imagination and human imagination, and they're not two different things. They're one thing, and it's about intensity and how it's keyed. And if it's high keyed and high intensity, then it becomes objective fact immediately. If it's low keyed, then it's something that you kind of feed and nurture and becomes reality over time. Bob, you talked about nothing appears or continues by a power of its own. And then he goes on to say, events happen because our imagination creates them, and yet they continue in being only as long as they receive such support, right? So that's this concept of you got to keep feeding it, right? You got to keep nurturing this. Otherwise, it's just this fleeting thought that comes and goes. When we solve the mystery of imagination, we will have discovered the secret of causation, that imagination creates reality. When we are aware of what we are imagining, which I call metacognition, thinking of thinking, that then we're in control of that process. And that objects and circumstances seem so independent from ourselves that we forget that we've actually created them, right? I thought that was kind of an interesting concept as well, that they owe their origin to our imagination, and that we create, of course, every book that we read tells us that we create our own reality, whether we know it or not. The individual who can summon at will whatever imaginal activity he or she pleases is the master of his or her fate, right? Amazing stuff, this guy. Abuse or underuse of this power breeds sterility. And so when you think about sterility, right, it's about a creative act, right? And so we lose the ability to be creative if we misuse or underuse this power, and it robs us of our actual wealth and experience. Do not bow before the dictate of facts or accept life on the basis of the world without, right? So don't accept reality at face value if it's not what you want for yourself, is what I got out of that. Assert supremacy over our imaginal acts and put all things in subjugation under them, right? I mean, again, this is empowering to us to use our creative abilities unabashedly and to its fullest extent, to imagine only states that are of value or of promise. No outer change until there's first imaginal change. Imagining the wish fulfilled creates a union with that state so that we behave in alignment with that state. And like you said, Missy, when one state grows so stable, then that becomes our way, it becomes our habit, it becomes our mood, it becomes our disposition in our reality. And he says the secret is self-abandonment or surrender, compiled with faith, which he calls a commitment to the unbelievable. How cool is that? And love, right? And he makes this distinction. And Missy, I'm going back to what you were saying earlier. He makes a distinction between thinking of something versus thinking from or thinking in something, right? And this is this thinking from the end or living from the end versus just having a fancy about something or daydreaming about something or thinking of something versus thinking from something, right? Putting yourself in that state, putting yourself in that vision. And I want to say something about the title of the book, because, you know, a lot of people equate Goddard with the law of attraction, and not once in any of his lectures or any of his books does he use that term. He talks about the law of assumption. And to me, the law of assumption, which is what I think this book is about assuming these states, entering these states, and then your reality becomes as if you are of that state. Whereas the law of attraction implies that there are things external that you bring to yourself. And I get that, but to me, this concept of the law of assumption is very much like, Goddard says this all the time, reality or creation is complete. It is already done. Everything is already done. And all you have to do is become that, right? As opposed to all this work of, oh, I need to attract the Ferrari or the whatever. So I don't know. I wanted
Can I jump in on that, Stuart?
Please, John.
Yeah, I think it was Yogananda who said, you'll never have it all, you are it all already. So what is there to achieve? I think there's a concept from Kashmir Shaivism, which is the idea that nothing exists that is not Shiva, right? And Shiva being a deity, Godhead, right? So So here is the creator of all. And so the idea of us needing to get and having to achieve, right? And certainly, as Bob was saying, purposeful, it's awakened, it's active, it's on purpose, that's good intention, okay? But at the same time, are we just rearranging, you know, what did he say? It was in chapter 1 here. I got it on the page. Everything you do unaccompanied by imaginal change is but futile readjustment of surfaces. So let me move this here. Oh, I need to go get that over there. And we're just moving, was it the old saying, rearranging chairs on the Titanic? Who's doing it? That's the question. Back to you, Stuart. I got tickled by that.
No, that's great. I love it. Going into revision, which I thought was really, I mean, I've read some of his stuff on revision and listened to a lot of his lectures on it. And it's definitely one of the tools that is in his, top 5 toolkit. But some of the stuff was really interesting to me. Everything that has been is still in existence. The past still exists and affects us, right? And so this concept of having to go back into our memory, and he calls it destroying the evil, right? I mean, that's some pretty hardcore stuff that he's talking about. And I'll just say that, go back and revise. And I like the image of the pruning shears, because it implies almost a Mr. Miyagi kind of bonsai cultivation, as opposed to the slash and burn chainsaw effect, right? So it is this purposeful reshaping of our identity, if that makes any sense to anybody. So, and then he says, and this is the end of chapter 1, to live nobly so that we have a past worthy of recall, right? Just again, like, I'm just blown away by all this stuff.
Well, the paragraph right before that blew my mind. That I highlighted that whole paragraph just before that line. It says, changing your life means changing the past. The causes of any present evil are the unrevised scenes of the past. The past and the present form the whole structure of man. They are carrying all of its contents with it. Any alteration of content will result in an alteration in the present and future. So like I was saying before, if I keep dragging the same story with me again and again, what am I going to get? So I've got to be able to revise that. Otherwise, I'm just, futilely moving surfaces around.
Very quantum. So in chapter 2, he introduces the concept, which is another one of my favorite Goddard concepts, of the bridge of incidence. And Missy, I'm sure you've heard this too. But to me, the concept of the law of assumption and the bridge of incidence go like this. And so he says, by living in the state of the wish fulfilled, or by assuming the state of the wish fulfilled, it leads us across a bridge of incidence to the fulfillment of our dream. And this concept of the bridge of incidence is like the magical stepping stones that appear before you when you're just committed to your vision. You don't plan for these things, and you don't, it's just the connection that creates the next experience, that opens up the door for the next circumstance or the next relationship or the next person that helps you out. And if you were to try and lay these things out in some sort of a sequential or experiential order, you don't have the ability to do such a thing. When you look back, when you arrive at your destination and you look back and you see, and then you're like, of course, I met this person who hooked me up with this, who, this experience happened, and oh my God, and then I got this job, or this thing had what, and of course it all makes sense. But when you're looking forward at it, you don't have the ability to see those things. So the bridge of incidence to me is really one of the greater gifts of Neville's teachings. And then he talks about, which again, all this stuff just blows me away, the ability to mentally move things as where they are to things as they ought to be. Excuse me. The ability to mentally move things from where they are to where they ought to be, right? And of course, that where they ought to be is where we want them to be, right? Not necessarily where they might exist at any moment in time or space. And he says that's one of the most important discoveries that we can make as human beings. And that one must adopt either the way of imagination or the way of the sense. No compromise or no neutrality is possible. And then the turning the wheel backward, back to revision. And he talks about the just versus the unjust steward. And it took me a little bit to wrap my head around that. And the concept, I think, and maybe you guys can chime in on this, but he's talking about when there's a tragedy or somebody else is going through a dilemma, and then the other person kind of almost like judges them into a box of not being able to change that, and that's their life lot, or condemning somebody to just being that kind of person or having that kind of experience. Whereas if that was you would revise that, or you would use your imagination to change that. Did anybody else catch that? Is that kind of what?
Stuart, I want to jump in on that, but
Please.
before I do, when you're talking about in chapter 2, and we seem to keep orbiting around the incident with the doctor and his wife. All right, of course, we're seeing just their perspective. We don't know what the contractor was thinking, because the contractor was critical to all this coming to pass. And maybe he thought, in his own mind, he envisioned a building going up on that piece of real estate. And he probably had as much a dream of building as they had a dream of it being built. And so it would be, he's kind of the missing character in the entire discussion here. He may have been doing the same imagination that the doctor and the wife were doing. But return to the unjust steward, and I love this parable for a number of reasons, and I'm going to take a running start at it, so bear with me. In the traditional Catholic liturgy, this gospel is read every year on the 8th Sunday after the Feast of Pentecost. So it comes in sometimes July, mid-July to early August, which is about the time that my birthday occurs. So it's very, very dear to me. But it's a nice dilemma. And I don't think Goddard does this parable justice. He highlights one thing that I didn't think about before, how the steward was actually revising things, but he was doing it for a purpose. The backstory is the steward did what he did because he was going to lose his job. His master had heard from other people, your steward is embezzling. And so now the steward gets word, I'm going to lose my job. And there's this great line, to dig I am not able, to beg I am ashamed. What am I going to do? I know what I'm going to do. He calls in the creditors and says, what do you owe my master, or debtors? And he says, take your bill and write 50 where you owed 100. Where you owed 100 measures of wheat, take it and write 80. And Christ said in the parable that the master, who was actually being robbed by his steward, commended the steward. He commended him for his foresight, for his making friends with the people that, he cut their debts. And so they said, okay, you can come work for me. The commendation of the steward is something that, many people have a problem with when you read the entire parable, because it's like he's committed an evil act.
Well, it sounds like it's about redemption and forgiveness, right?
It is. It is. But again, also missing in this is the fact that Christ recognized that in this world, you have to work with what you're given. And what you're given isn't necessarily optimal at the time. So what you have to do is and the moral is, he says, make friends with the mammon of iniquity. Make friends with them. And I actually read a scholar who said this was directed at a group called the Essenes, who lived contemporaneously with Christ. And they called themselves the children of light. And they had nothing to do with the world, absolutely nothing to do with the world. And they thought they could get along without the world. They hid themselves in caves and just lived by themselves. So he said, you've got to work with what you've got in this world. And the steward is a perfect example of that, right? He himself was not the purest of men, but he was able to survive because he knew the ways of the world. And he knew how to make the world work for him and with him. So I believe that what Neville Goddard is saying here is he is quote, literally revising things. He's rewriting bills. Why is he doing that? So he can keep his head above water. He can float and he can survive. But it's necessary for him to revise the past to do so.
But it's not noble what he did. There's no nobility in that, but he used the law. And I just want to say to people who may be listening, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
But to people who may be listening in on YouTube, I have listened to his lectures a million times and his voice is in my head constantly. I talk to him, okay? But what I didn't do, even though I knew about it, I didn't do the law revision by the law. And now that we're reading this book, it is coming at just the right time. And last night I did one. I think it's going to take me more than one time. I had to go all the way back to first grade to revise this thing that imprinted on me, to use a word that Scott said, so badly that it was like an earthquake in my life in the first grade. And it was unjust. And that's my big trigger. So I went back and I changed it and I felt a lot better. And I'm just going to keep doing that because the person who did that to me was very wrong. It was a nun and she shouldn't have done that. And she may have done that to other children too. And so I got to think about her too. She's probably gone from this world. She's maybe just having a bad day, but I was 5 freaking years old and she practically ruined my life. That's one of the things. I have a list of things to revise, and now I am going to revise them. So if you're listening on YouTube and you think that I can't change that fact, you can change any fact, okay? If we had enough stability amongst us, we could rewrite Singing in the Rain and change Gene Kelly's dance. If we had enough stability and enough will and put enough effort toward it, we could do it. It is possible. But we don't need to do that because it was done perfectly. We just need to revise our own lives. And once we revise our own lives, the other lives will be revised. And, you know, I had forgave this lady a long time ago, but it didn't do me any good because I didn't revise what happened. So I'm changing the history. I'm going to write to myself from a year from now, and that way I can be further away from the facts that I'm allowing. There's no doubt that I'm allowing them to, it's almost like wearing like blinders like they put on a horse. I can't get away from that. It is some kind of fear. I don't know what it is really, because it doesn't really matter. I just have to do what is the right thing. And I'm going to do it. And I have to stop pretending it's Audrey Regini and it's going to go like that. That's half my problem. I got, you know, a sitcom brain. So, you know, Mr. Brady got it done in 20 minutes, but the Robert Reed, the actor, used to tell his kids, so why don't you treat us like the Brady kids? And he says, because you don't give me 30-minute problems. That's why. So that's what I'm going to do. And please hold me accountable because I expect to be well. I expect to be healed. And I expect to hear a doctor say to me, there's nothing, we can't see anything. We can't find anything. We can't. So, and Neville Goddard could do it. He had the power. So his whole family could do it like that. But even he had trouble. For years, he'd been doing this, decades, but he had this bad tooth. And he kept going to this dentist. And every time he went, it got worse. He said, what am I doing? Why am I going to this stupid dentist? But he didn't say that because he didn't talk as nasty as I do. And he did it in his imagination and he fixed his tooth. And for some reason, you know, he just, isn't it funny? He kind of left himself out while he helped other people. He could get somebody $50,000 by the next day. He would just sit in his chair in the same place by his phone and he just did it. And I really encourage you to listen to him. And a book that's read of his stuff is okay. But when you hear his voice, you need his voice in your head. It's very, very helpful. So I'm sorry I interrupted, but
Missy's fired up, everybody.
Fired
Missy
up.
Fire, everybody. Woo! Thank you for the book suggestion, Missy. We're going to wrap up here in 4 minutes. Last thoughts from anybody? Stuart?
I got a final quote from the end of chapter 3 that really hit me here that I thought I would leave us with. Because it seems like something he's leaving us with, at least at this point. Make results and an accomplishment the crucial test of true imagination. Only by this process of experimentation can we realize the potential power of awakened and controlled imagination. So that's my parting thought this evening.
Thank you.
There it is. Thank you, Stuart. And thank you, Bob, Missy, and of course, everyone who is here participating, Christina, Catherine. Christina, did you have a comment?
No, I just definitely, when reading through it, I love the sense of authorship of your todays and your tomorrows. And even, like Missy's talking about reaching back. If I could turn back time, apparently you can. You just rewrite the script like, whoa, we need an edit in here. And I think that's the power of forgiveness. Some bullshit happens to you when you're a kid and it's unfair. You find out about it, you sort of, and then you go, oh, I've had that experience. I had an experience of my mom doing something that, really wrecked, sort of like my from somewhere between 8 and about 28, I was, begrudging with my relationship with my mom. And I found it in a counseling moment, got all kind of welled up with tears and then I shared it with my cousin and she said, oh, are you going to tell your mom? I said, why would I tell her? She did the best that she knew at the time. I just read it in a certain way, which affected me, messed me up for about 25 years. But why would I go back and tell her? She'd feel guilty, but I dealt with it myself and I was like free when I found it. She already felt bad about making me watch hockey every Saturday night instead of the movies once in a while. But yeah, no, I really like the authors, the sense of ownership of the present and ownership of writing the future.
The past.
Thank you.
Past. Don't forget the past.
Yeah.
Good times.
Abba
Thank you,
dabba do.
Christina.
That's what I think
Glad
for
you were
you.
here. Thanks for coming. Anybody else before we wrap up for tonight? Last call.
Okay, Sarah. Whatever will be, will
He has
be.
something. Lindsay.
Oh, no, I just like the aspect of awakened imagination, because you can think, but if it's on autopilot, kind of, that's where I was going with that. I was like, it's got to wake up first. Yeah. Works with a purpose. That's so true. I don't know, that just like has been in my, I've just saw that over and over since I read that. So yeah, this was really good. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you. Glad you're here, my friend. Good to hear your voice. All right, my friends. Well, 3 more chapters. What are these next 3 chapters? Let me get the chapter titles so that we know what we're reading here. There is no fiction, subtle threads, and visionary fancy. So there you go. I'll see you guys back here in a week. Thank you all for being here. Let's put this stuff to use. All right. You make it a great day.